Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. This is Moyna Bass Fishes. I am Jim Moyna, President and CEO of Moyna Bass Fishes. More of that than a professional angler these days, because these fish are not giving me any kind of respect as a professional. That's got to change. What do I got to do to these fish? Anyhow, this video I'm going to recap the 2025 Bassmaster Open tournament. I'm going to talk about the techniques, my strategies, my wins, my losses during the course of practice and the tournament. So let's just get right off and say there were 235 competitors. I finished in 100th place with 12 pounds 12 ounces. Now this tournament turned into a one-day tournament because due to high winds on day one with big high winds with big waves, they canceled that day. Day two was yesterday. That was the day we got the fish. Day three is today, and that was canceled as well, which they actually announced the cancellation of today back on day one, because the winds it is really windy. It's been progressively getting more windy. It's probably the time of this video, and maybe it's about 11 a.m. or so. And there's also the prediction of a severe front with severe weather coming through. Probably right, it would be happening probably right during the weigh-in time. So that's the decision they made 2 days ago, and it looks like they're probably going to be right. So it turned out to be just a one-day tournament when it was scheduled for 3. And like I said, I got 100th place. So let's talk about strategy. Let's talk about the fails of the week. Probably my number one fail was you get 3 days to practice. It's off limits. And then you get 3 days of practice, and there's another day of off limits right before the tournament. So looking back on my mindset coming into this tournament, it was too wide open, meaning I had too much of an open mind. I was too open to trying many different things, when that can just be a recipe for disaster. And I'm guilty of doing this, especially on the first tournament of every year. I'm guilty as charged. I need to come in with my best baits, my best, my strongest confidence in certain techniques, and I need to apply that hard the first day and see where that gets me. I didn't do that, and it cost me, because by day 3 of the tournament, or by day 3 of the practice, I was clueless, because I hadn't done anything I really anything that I really know of what I should do. And not only that, I practiced all new water. I didn't go to any of the places that I fished in the past, and kind of the reason for that was because I usually get a check here most of the times, not always. This time I did not get a check. But I've never contended for a top 10. So I decided I was going to just scout all new places, and then if nothing else, I could fall back on what I know for the third day of practice and maybe the tournament. So, but I really needed to just get to the gritty of this lake as quick as I could on the first day, and then expand. Set a foundation. Here are the techniques I'm comfortable with that are working. These are the types of places that are working, that I've caught them in before in the past, and then build on that with the remaining practice. Big mistake on my part. I've been guilty of it before in the past. I can't do that again. You just, as you just sit there all winter long, you just think to yourself, boy, I sure would like to try this pattern, or I sure would like to learn how to do this bait better. And it just failed badly. So Um, so yeah, that's my biggest fail of this whole tournament. So the one thing that I had to go on was on um, on Monday. Monday was the second day of practice. So that night, I anxiously awaited and then watched the what's called Tackle Talk Live. That's a podcast down here that covers uh, Sam Rayburn, Toledo Bend, Lake of the Pines, and some of the other bodies of waters around here. The reason why I wanted to watch that because the winner of a tournament out here on Sam Rayburn on Saturday, so 2 days prior, which would have been the day before our first day of practice, the winner had 41 pounds for 5 fish. So I wanted to hear if they could pull any information from him when they interviewed him. I forget the gentleman's name, but they did pull some information from him. And mainly the key thing that I decided to go with was the gentleman said that the big bag that they caught came mostly out of one spot, a hard bottom spot. Brush pile really wasn't a factor, and he said he started out in the lake and worked his way back, whatever that means, wherever he was. Probably to me it tells me he started out on some way outside main lake points and then just progressed back fishing points or whatever hard spots as he progressed back towards the back of a creek of some kind. So with that in mind, that's what I had to go with on the last day of practice, and I decided that's what I'll go with. And then he also said he caught him on a crankbait. So I'm like, all right, I had a crankbait tied on, didn't throw it much, but I'm like, all right, that's how I've caught him here in the past a few times. And so I went out and I did a lot of cranking the last day of practice, found some fish in the depth that he suggested that his fish were in, which was 15 feet. And that's what I had to go with. But I only had two spots. where I caught some fish doing that. And they weren't big. They were keepers. But I thought to myself, all right, this is what I got. This is what I can do with. This is what I'm going to just work with this. I'm going to hit those two spots. My plan was to hit those two spots on the day of the tournament. And then one brush pile I found that had like 5 or 6 fish hanging around it, that they all came right for my bait when I threw it in there and got the bait away from them before I hooked one. So that was the plan, and then after that I was just going to fish all new water, meaning I was going to look for 15 foot of water, hard bottom, 15 foot of water type spots, preferably on a point or on a hard preferably on a point with contour lines close together. That's what I had in mind. So going into the tournament, drove to my first spot, got there. Within 5 minutes, I caught my first one. So that was nice. So I'm like, okay, they must be here. And there were several fish there. Not like a super ton, but I bet there had to be like 15, 20 fish there. Well, I proceeded to just hammer away on that spot. Never caught another fish. Not one. Never had a bite, nothing. And that's what the one I caught was on the crankbait. Here's that crankbait. Right here. Blueback chartreuse side. That's the dives down about 16 feet, 15, 16 feet. But that was really disappointing to only catch one off of that spot. So now I go to spot number 2, where there weren't as many fish, but I caught a 4-pounder there, and I did catch a couple other fish, saw some other fish on the graph. So I go there and I catch nothing, right? So now we're a couple hours into it. So now I run to that brush pile that I mentioned. Go there, brush piles. I see it on my Lowrance active target. And this is a shallower brush pile, like in about 9 foot of water. 8-9 foot of water further back in a cove. So it's one where fish are going to stop at as they go back into spawn or they come out from the shallows. So it's a natural, and it's a long and sharp contour line. So I'm pretty excited about getting to this brush pile. And I get there, it comes into view on the Lowrance active target, and once you know it, I'm not seeing anything. Hey Ed, I'm not seeing anything on the Lowrance active target. I may throw some casts over there. No fish are. Sometimes they're hidden in the brush and they come out of it. Well, none of that happened. So now it was basically. So now I'm at the point where I got to run some new water, and we are probably, it has to be like 3 hours into it, maybe something like that. So now I'm thinking back. Okay, there's a spot back towards the back of a cove, not all the way back, but there's a point that's further back in a cove. It's a spot where I caught some fish in years past, and I know there's some brush pile. Not only is the point itself hard bottom, but there's some brush out from it, and I'm like, okay, that's maybe a good place to go look. So I go there, and I usually find fish back here. I've been there more than once over the years, and it's a spot that's saved my butt one time, about 3-4 years ago. Totally saved my butt. I was struggling, and I go there and I fill out my limit. So I'm thinking, all right, let's lean on that spot. Maybe it can bail me out again. I haven't checked it this year, but I'm like, let's go try it. And I go there and I fish for probably a good 40 minutes or so, because I mean that's how long it takes to work the area and the brush piles. Half hour at most. But I come up empty, so I'm still got one fish. Frustrating. So now I'm like, all right, well, let's try running it while we're in this area. Let's try running a couple brush piles from years past. So I do that, and nothing. So now I'm like, okay, enough of this brush pile. Let's go back to the 15-foot bottom, 15-foot depths with hard bottom. And there's a spot in this area where I caught a couple of like 5.5 pounders about 3-4 years ago in a practice period, and I haven't caught anything since. In fact, I've fished in practice, but I'm like, you know what? It's been 2 days. We had a lot of weather, a big cool down. Maybe some fish have pulled out here or pulled up. Who knows? So I go there, and I'm just hoping, the big fish are going to show up. Well, the little fish showed up, and I actually think I ended up catching 3 or 4 keepers. I don't know if I got to my limit or not. I might have got to 4 on this spot, but I also caught a lot of undersized fish. The first couple came on this, right? This crankbait that I already showed you guys. So yeah, I know I got 2 keepers on that. I probably might have filled out my limit there. And then I noticed they were the second one I caught was like right close to the boat on that crankbait, and I could see some fish, just little tops of them, just sticking off the bottom, right close to the boat. So then I just took this Nico rig worm here with the tail dipped in chartreuse, and so I threw that out there, and I started getting bites. And I didn't even throw it out there. I literally just dropped it under the trolling motor. I threw it out a couple times, nothing, but I kept noticing this activity. I don't know if they were white bass or largemouth right under the boat. So then I just started fishing right under the boat, and I'd start, every time I drop it down there, I'd fish it for about 5-10 seconds, and another fish would grab it. And a lot of them were, babies. Well, they all were babies for this lake, I guess. But, I did build up to either 4 or 5 fish from there until eventually the bite stopped. And those fish literally, I was catching them. I was literally standing right here in the well at times and holding my rod, because it seems like they weren't even under the trolling motor. They were more like from this boat cleat to this other boat cleat in the back here. The fish were like right in that zone. So that's where I was doing my fish, just holding them straight down in like 15 foot. It was probably 15, 16 foot right there. And eventually those fish warm out or they disappeared, whatever. I couldn't relocate those fish. So now it's time to move. And we're well into, I probably stayed there a little too long, but, you know, so I tried to relocate those fish or relocate new ones. So I moved around you know, I wasn't really on the tip of that point. So I went out to the tip, went down the other side of it, just looking around, nothing, couldn't find anything. So now it's time to move again. And okay, let's go try a brand new point. And it's a point I'd fished several years ago. And I didn't have any waypoints on it, which means I didn't catch nothing, but I remember fishing there. But I'm like, you know what? It's set up the right way, just like the point is that I just fished. It's set up the right way, and with the right depth. So I go over there, and literally, the mother load of fish were there. It was crazy how many fish were there. I mean, I caught so many fish, but again, unfortunately, they were small. Most of them, they were small. There were no big quality fish there. And I mean, I fished it. I mean, I've worked it over till the bites were not coming anymore. And I just kept hoping for the big one, or kept hoping, you know, I had a couple that were like 2 3/4 pounders out of that school. I kept hoping, you know, maybe get another one of those to cull out a 2-pounder. But it ran out. So by now I had like 40 minutes of fishing time left. You know, I had a run back. I was fishing mid-lake. So I had a, you know, a good 25-minute run back. So literally I had maybe a half hour of fishing time left or so. You know, if you include the run time. So, because I was under an hour, had to be in at 3:50, so now it was past 3. It was more like, yeah, it was past 3. So now I'm like, okay, let's go check out. Oh, let me just back up. Here's something that, okay, like I said, so on that point where there's like a ton of fish, and I literally caught a ton. I mean, by the end of the day, I'd caught like 40 to 50 fish combined. So I started catching them on this, and just for the heck of it, I had this drop shot rigged up. The problem with this is it takes forever for it to sink to the bottom to where the fish were. Most of the fish were relating to the bottom. So I rigged this up in practice, or the night before the tournament. Basically the same worm, but on a drop shot that's a 1/2 ounce lead tungsten weight, and I don't know, it's about 8-inch leader, drop leader. So I rigged that up, and I was getting the bites quicker with this thing because I wouldn't have to wait for it to sink, get down to the fish, and we could get right to business of triggering fish. And it might actually trigger the fish too better, because I mean the other thing triggered them as well, but this thing, they really got after this thing for some reason. So I don't know if just the more inline, because this was, you know, this is rigged on a wacky rig, meaning the hook's rigged through the middle, and this is rigged on a Texas, more of a traditional Texas kind of a rigging. And maybe that inline rigging, they wanted, you know, I don't know. It seemed like the only problem was those fish on the drop shot, they were tearing the bait off the hook all the time, because a lot of them were small fish, so they just grabbed the back of it and tear it off. And there were white bass out there doing the same kind of thing. So I did, you know, this would waste time because it would take long to sink. This would waste time because I'd have to re-rig it. I'd have to re-rig the worm, and I had to dye the tail. The tail chartreuse, I didn't have them pre-dyed, which normally I don't like to. You know, I didn't know I'd be doing that, so I don't like to normally. I mean, if I know that's what I'm going to do, I'll take the morning right before takeoff and take out a bag and just dye them all. But if you dye them all ahead of time, Like let's say I just buy the bag and then I dye them all. Well, and I don't use that bag for a month. Well, all that dye like just leaches all over the place, and you kind of lose the effect. So the whole every bait will be kind of chartreusey from top to bottom, is what I've noticed. But anyhow, that is that. So I had the last 40 minutes, or not even, no, like 30 minutes or less to fish. So I'm like, okay, let's go to the place where I caught that 11 pounder a few years ago in practice. So I run over there. There's a guy sitting right there. So, okay, well, I did practice there this year, caught nothing. But I'm like, let's try give it another shot. Somebody was there. So I'm like, all right, well, let's run back to the place where I first started. So I run over there, and there's a guy sitting there. So now I'm like, so then I go and hit one other just brand new place just for a little bit, and I'm not seeing much, so that's burning time. So now, catch nothing there. So I'm like, okay, I got a spot close to takeoff, I'll hit. So I run back. I've got about 10 minutes to fish around takeoff. Don't catch it. Don't catch nothing. So I end up with 5 fish for 12, 100th place. The win of this tournament would be knowing that this bait worked quite well on this drop shot. That was a win. Something I can bring forward. It worked I also had a Carolina rig set up, and as well as this did, I'd rather throw this than a Carolina rig out here. And the reason why is because with that, I can tell with Carolina rig, you have so much of a leader that the fish can grab it and get you around a stump or a brush pile before you realize what's happening. Or it's just harder to work the Carolina rig through brush piles. So this drop shot on an 8-inch leader, you can probably even take it down to like 6 inches. You feel the bites immediately. You're not going to be giving the fish a chance to swim around brush with the long leader of Carolina rig. I know the Carolina rig is an absolute staple in this lake, and for good reason, because it does work. So, but I like that drop shot rig. It's going forward. Plus, you can drop, if you see a brush pile, you can just pitch it over there and drop it down along the side of it. Whereas, I don't know, the Carolina rig, you can't just, it's just not as precise like that. I don't know. But I'll still always have Carolina rig rigged up when I come to this lake, for sure. All right, so that's the recap. Any other important details? I really can't think of any other important details. Any other wins? What other wins? It was kind of a win getting on that big school in the tournament. That was kind of a win, even though I didn't, it didn't produce the right kind of fish. But it was a win, at least from having a complete disaster tournament. We got I got to finish in the top 50 in the points, okay, in order to move on to the final 3 tournament series this fall. Finishing 100th place sucks for that, for getting, for trying to get into the top 50. But it's still doable. That's the thing. So it's not out of reach. It's still doable. I just got to put together three money finishes now from here on out. These last 3, which would be Kentucky Lake, which will be the first week in March. That lake I've had some really good luck there. Ledge fishing. I don't know if it's going to be a ledge tournament, though. I've never been there in March, so it's going to be kind of a new deal. The other one's Lake Norfolk. Never seen it. Don't know anything about it, other than it's probably a typical Ozarks lake, meaning it's probably going to be just like Bull Shoals, Beaver Lake, Table Rock. It's probably that type. It looks like that type of a fishery, just looking at the map. and knowing the geology of that area, it's just that it's going to be that typical type of a lake. And then lastly, Leech Lake, which is an hour from my house, and certainly I plan on getting the money. I mean, I absolutely, definitely plan on getting a money finish there. You never know, but anything anything worse, I guess, than a money finish there would be just disaster. So, all right, that's it. One last tip. So this Nico rig I showed you, okay, that one does not have a brush guard. I also have the same one, same worm, Nico rig with a brush guard, and that is because of the brush piles that are out here. I'd much rather throw this one into the brush pile than the one without the brush guard. So why not just throw this one all the time that has a brush guard? Well, your hookup percentage is less, like significantly less. So that is why I try to use the other one when I can, and only go to the brush guarded one when there's brush. So even in weeds, even if I'm fishing weeds, I'll go with the open hook. That's it. Long enough. Thanks for watching. Over and out.